parents yelled. "You're just jealous of your sister's success," and told me to get lost. I said, "Okay," and never looked back. 2 months later, they came crawling when I always thought family loyalty was supposed to be this unbreakable thing. The kind of thing that gets you through the hard times and makes you feel like you belong, no matter what. But I was wrong. For me, family loyalty was just a rope they used to pull me back whenever I tried to climb out of the hole they dug for me. It all came to a head one ordinary Saturday afternoon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the smell of stale coffee lingering in the air, when my mother delivered the blow that would change everything. My sister, Emily, was home for the weekend from her fancy corporate job, her smile as smug as always. She was talking about her latest promotion and how she was now managing a whole team of people. My father, his face glued to his phone, grunted in approval every now and then. My mother just beamed like Emily had cured cancer. I tried to contribute to the conversation, mentioning a project I was working on at my own job, nothing fancy, but something I was proud of. The words barely left my mouth before my mom cut me off, her voice dripping with condescension. "That's nice, but it's not exactly in the same league as Emily's achievements, is it?" My sister giggled, adding, "Don't be so sensitive. You're just jealous because you can't keep up." That was it. That one word, jealous, snapped something in me. I stood up, fists clenched, trying to swallow the lump of anger rising in my throat. "Jealous?" I echoed. "That's what you think this is?" My father finally looked up from his phone, his mouth curling into a smirk. "Well, if the shoe fits." I felt my chest tighten, like my heart was about to burst through my ribcage. "You know what?" I said, my voice shaking but steady enough to get the words out. "You're right. If you think I'm just jealous of her success, then maybe it's better if I'm not around to spoil your perfect family dinners." My mother blinked, as if she couldn't quite comprehend what I was saying. My sister's grin widened, as if she'd won some unspoken game. And then my father, without missing a beat, muttered, "Maybe it is better that way." That was it, the spark that lit the fuse. I grabbed my coat, threw it over my shoulder, and said, "Okay. I'll get lost. For good." Without waiting for their reaction, I walked out the front door and didn't look back. Not once. It was a surprisingly calm exit, but inside, I was burning with something fierce. Anger. Betrayal. And a determination that I'd never felt before. I didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to me. The moment I stepped outside and the cool air hit my face, I felt a strange sort of freedom. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest for years, the constant comparisons, the snide remarks, the guilt trips, vanished. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was clear. I got into my beat-up old car, the one my dad always mocked for being too old to bother fixing, and just drove. I didn't have a destination in mind, but I knew I needed to get away from them, from the house, from everything. It wasn't until I found myself parked in a nearly empty lot behind a diner that I realized I'd been driving for hours. I sat there, watching the neon lights flicker, thinking about everything they'd said to me over the years. "You're just jealous of Emily. Why can't you be more like her? You'll never amount to anything if you don't start trying harder." I let each memory wash over me, but instead of feeling crushed by them like I usually did, I felt something else, resolve. They didn't believe in me? Fine. I would make them regret ever doubting me. That night, as I sat in the quiet solitude of that car, I made a decision. I was done trying to earn their approval. From now on, I was going to focus on building something for myself. Something real. Something they couldn't take away or diminish with a few well-placed insults. It wasn't about proving them wrong, though, I'll admit, the thought was delicious. It was about proving to myself that I was more than what they saw. I pulled out my phone and started making a list. A real, actionable list. Ideas for a business I'd been toying with for years but never had the courage to pursue because I was too busy chasing their validation. Contacts I could reach out to. Skills I needed to sharpen. I wasn't going to wait for the right moment. I was going to make it happen, starting that night. And just like that, my self-imposed exile turned into the most productive, focused 2 months of my life. I wasn't sure if it was spite or determination, or maybe both, but those next 2 months were a blur of motion. I barely slept, fueled by cheap coffee and the kind of raw ambition that only comes from years of being underestimated. Every waking hour was spent turning my half-formed idea into a business plan. I dusted off the contacts I'd made at a networking event years ago, reached out to former classmates, even cold-emailed potential partners. I worked out of a tiny co-working space I rented with the last bit of savings I had, surrounded by other people trying to make something from nothing. It was strange how easily things started falling into place once I stopped caring about impressing anyone but myself. I pitched my idea, a logistics platform aimed at optimizing supply chains for small businesses, to anyone who would listen. Most people politely nodded and moved on, but a few saw the potential. One guy, Mark, an old college friend who had quietly built a reputation as a savvy investor, offered to help fund the project. For the first time in my life, someone believed in me not because of who I was related to, but because of what I was capable of. I worked around the clock, learned everything I could about the industry, and slowly, piece by piece, built something real. The first contract came through, a local chain of stores that needed better inventory management. Then a second. And by the end of the second month, I wasn't just scraping by. I was thriving. The business was profitable. I was getting calls from other companies, even getting mentioned in a few trade publications as the new guy to watch. But the real kicker? Emily's company, yes, her company, was one of the clients I ended up landing through a third-party contract. She didn't even know it at first, and when she found out, I heard through the grapevine that she was furious. The golden child being overshadowed by the brother she'd always dismissed as jealous? Oh, the irony. It was like all those years of being belittled had turned into jet fuel. And while they were busy basking in their own reflections, I was quietly building an empire they couldn't ignore. It wasn't long before the phone calls started. At first, I ignored them, voicemails from my mother, texts from my father, even a hesitant email from Emily herself. They all had the same tone, regret thinly disguised as casual concern. "How have you been? Just checking in to see if you're okay. We're so proud of you." Proud of me? Now? The same people who told me to get lost? I let the messages pile up. Each one felt like a small, twisted victory. They thought I would crawl back, desperate for their approval. But here I was, standing on my own, with a thriving business and a name people actually respected. They were the ones crawling back now. The real test came on a rainy Sunday afternoon. I was sitting at my new office, a proper one this time, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that made me feel like I'd finally arrived, when my phone rang. I glanced down to see my father's name flashing on the screen. I could have ignored it like I had the others, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" I answered, keeping my voice neutral. His voice, hesitant and uncharacteristically soft, came through. "Son, we were wondering if we could stop by. Just to talk." I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch long enough for him to feel it. "Talk about what?" "About everything," he said. "We just want to clear the air. We miss you." I almost laughed. They missed me? Now that the golden child's light was fading and I was the one shining, they missed me? But instead of slamming the door shut, I decided to let them come. I wanted them to see it all, the office, the success, the life I'd built without them. They showed up the next day, my mother, my father, and Emily. They looked out of place in the sleek lobby of my office building, their carefully curated smiles cracking at the edges. My father's suit looked a little too tight, and my mother clutched her purse like it was the only thing anchoring her in the unfamiliar space. Emily looked around with wide eyes, her lips tightening when she realized how far I'd come in just 2 months. I met them in the lobby, my posture relaxed but my expression unreadable. "Let's talk upstairs," I said, leading them to the elevator. The ride was silent, except for the occasional clearing of a throat. When we stepped into my office, I watched them take it all in, the high ceilings, the view of the city, the awards on the shelf that I'd earned on my own. We sat around the polished conference table, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then my father, ever the pragmatist, broke the silence. This is impressive, he said, his voice strained. I shrugged. Thanks. My mother leaned forward, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. We were wrong about you, she said. We didn't mean to make you feel like you weren't part of the family. Emily, to her credit, didn't even try to fake remorse. She just sat there, arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. I could tell this was humiliating for her. I waited, letting the silence fill the room. Then I spoke, my voice steady and calm. You told me to get lost. You said I was just jealous of Emily's success. And now, when you see what I've built, you come back, hoping I'll let you in. Why? Because now I have something you want? Recognition? Access? Money? My father bristled. That's not fair. No. I cut in. It's more than fair. It's the truth. I gave you everything I could, my time, my respect, my love. And you repaid me with mockery, with condescension. And when I finally said enough was enough, you acted like I was the one in the wrong. They sat there, stunned, as I leaned back in my chair. This isn't about revenge, I continued. It's about respect. Something you never gave me. And now you'll have to live with the fact that I don't need you. Not for approval, not for validation, and definitely not for family. Their faces fell. I could see the realization dawning in their eyes, that they had lost me, not because I was petty or vindictive, but because I finally saw my own worth. They sat there for a moment, processing the weight of my words. My mother opened her mouth, as if to say something, but no words came out. My father's shoulders sagged, and for once, even Emily looked like she had no idea how to respond. I didn't call you here to humiliate you, I said, my voice even but firm. I called you here because I wanted you to see what you gave up. I wanted you to see that the person you dismissed, the one you belittled and pushed aside, didn't need your approval to succeed. And now, you'll never get to claim any part of this. My mother's voice broke as she whispered, Please, we're still your family. I looked at her, feeling a fleeting pang of something. Was it pity? Maybe. But it passed. You're right, I said softly. You were my family. But family doesn't just share blood. It's about loyalty, support, and love. You made it clear I wasn't worth any of that to you. And now I'm making it clear that I don't need you to feel whole. Emily stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. You think you're so much better than us now, she snapped. Just because you got lucky. I met her gaze calmly. Luck had nothing to do with it. This was built from grit, hard work, and belief in myself. The same belief you all tried to strip away from me. My father cleared his throat, his voice low and strained. So that's it? You're cutting us off? I nodded. That's exactly it. This is goodbye. They sat there, stunned, as I rose from my chair. I'll have someone escort you out, I said. Good luck with everything. I walked out of the conference room, leaving them behind, feeling more powerful than I ever had before. I left the conference room without a backward glance, but the weight of that moment stayed with me. The elevator ride down was silent, just me and the polished walls reflecting back the face of a man who was finally free. Free from their expectations, their dismissals, and their thinly veiled mockery. As the doors slid open, I stepped out onto the street, inhaling the crisp air with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was strange, liberating, really, how light I felt. The burden of trying to prove myself to them had lifted, and in its place was a kind of confidence that wasn't fueled by anger anymore. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. In the weeks that followed, I poured even more of myself into the business. Word spread quickly, and soon I was landing bigger clients, expanding my reach. I hired a small team, people who believed in the vision, who worked with the same tenacity I had when I started. Each contract, each milestone, felt like a quiet triumph over the years of being overshadowed by my sister's so-called achievements. But the biggest surprise came from the community. People who had once overlooked me now sought my advice, admired what I'd built, and genuinely respected me. I'd never been one for the spotlight, but there was something deeply satisfying about knowing I'd earned it on my own terms. And in the back of my mind I knew my parents were watching from the sidelines, regret clinging to them like a second skin. The calls stopped after a while. I figured they realized I wasn't going to come crawling back, and maybe, just maybe, they were starting to grasp the depth of what they'd lost. But then, one morning a few weeks later, I was sipping coffee in my sunlit office, watching the city bustle below, when my receptionist buzzed through. "There's a couple here," she said, hesitating. "They say they're your parents." I let the silence stretch before answering. "Tell them I'm busy." A minute later she buzzed again. "They're asking if they can wait. They say it's urgent." I sighed. I could have told her to send them away, but a part of me was curious. What was their game this time? Regret? Begging? Another guilt trip? I told her to send them up. When they stepped into the office, they looked older, more worn down. My mother's makeup couldn't hide the worry lines etched deep into her face, and my father's confident posture was gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like defeat. Emily wasn't with them, which spoke volumes. They sat across from me, the same conference table where, not long ago, I'd shown them the reality of who I'd become. My mother was the first to speak, her voice thin and trembling. "We were wrong," she said softly. "About everything." My father nodded, staring down at the table. "You proved us wrong." For a moment, I let the silence hang heavy between us, watching them squirm in the discomfort. Finally I spoke, my voice calm but cutting. "I didn't prove anything to you. I proved it to myself. And it's too late for you to share in it." My mother's eyes brimmed with tears. "Please, we just want to be part of your life again. We're your family." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Family? You only remember I'm family now that I've built something you can't ignore? You threw me away like trash because I didn't shine like Emily. Now you want to come back because you realize you bet on the wrong horse?" My father's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "No," I said, my voice sharper now. "What's not fair is years of being treated like I didn't matter. What's not fair is being told to get lost because you thought I was just jealous of her success. What's not fair is you only realizing what you lost once you couldn't ride her coattails anymore." My mother was crying openly now. "We were wrong, we're sorry. Can't we start over?" I stood up, walking to the window, watching the city spread out below. I could almost hear the echoes of every insult, every dismissal, every time they'd ignored my efforts or downplayed my achievements. I turned back to face them, my voice low but steady. "You can't start over. You made your choice when you told me to leave. When you let me walk out that door, you made it clear where I stood in your eyes." They sat there, stunned, the realization finally sinking in. "You're welcome to leave now," I said softly. "I have a meeting in 15 minutes. They stood slowly, shuffling toward the door. My mother turned back, her voice barely a whisper. "We'll always be here if you change your mind." I gave her a small, cold smile. "I won't." And just like that, they were gone. I sat back down, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Not because I missed them, I didn't, but because it was the final, undeniable proof that I had outgrown the small, suffocating world they tried to keep me in. And now? I was free to live my life without the weight of their expectations. I watched them walk out of my office, their silhouettes swallowed by the elevator doors. For a long moment, I just stood there, listening to the faint echo of my own breath, the tick of the clock on the wall, the distant hum of the city below. I should have felt triumphant, but what I felt was deeper, solid, grounded. I had made a choice, not just to reject their hollow apologies, but to stand taller, to reclaim every inch of dignity they had tried to strip away. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, looking out over the skyline. The lights of the city blinked back at me, each one a reminder of the life I had built with my own hands. I thought about the years I had spent trying to be the son they wanted, quiet, accommodating, ever helpful, always waiting for the tiniest scrap of approval. And then, the moment I stopped needing it, everything changed. A week after their visit, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Emily's fortunes had begun to slip. Rumors were swirling. She'd made a series of bad decisions at work, mishandled a major account, and the company was quietly sidelining her. For someone who had always basked in the glow of praise and admiration, it was a fall she wasn't prepared for. And when I heard she'd reached out to some of the same contacts I had used to build my business, desperately trying to reclaim her fading reputation, I didn't feel smug or vindicated. I felt nothing. Because I had already moved on. Around the same time, I finalized a major deal that would put my company on the map nationally. The kind of deal that made headlines in trade publications and drew attention from industry giants. The day the contracts were signed, my phone buzzed with congratulations, from friends, from peers, even from former skeptics. But not from my parents. They were silent. Maybe they were too embarrassed to reach out, or maybe they'd finally accepted that I wasn't coming back. One evening, as I was closing up the office after a late meeting, I got a text from my cousin Melissa, the one family member who'd always quietly supported me. It was short, simple. "They're talking about you. They finally realize what they lost." I smiled faintly at the screen. Let them talk. Let them stew in the silence they created. I didn't need their validation, not anymore. I'd spent too long waiting for something they were never capable of giving. And now? I was finally giving myself everything they couldn't. As I turned off the lights and stepped into the quiet night, I felt taller, stronger. I wasn't just walking away from them. I was walking towards something better. Toward a life where I could be unapologetically myself, where success was mine and mine alone. Where family was chosen, built from loyalty and respect, not bloodlines and betrayal. It was a quiet evening when I realized the weight was finally gone. I sat in my apartment, sipping a cup of coffee, the city lights glittering outside. The silence wasn't empty, it was peaceful. No more phone calls, no more desperate apologies, no more guilt. Just me, my own success, and the knowledge that I'd built something real. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need them at all. And I knew deep down that I never really had. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's this. When someone tells you that you're not enough, that you'll never measure up, don't argue. Don't try to prove them wrong for their sake. Prove them wrong for yourself. Build your own life. And when they come crawling back, remember, sometimes the greatest revenge is simply walking away and never looking back.